Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, reacting to the big stories of the day, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, author and academic Lisa McKenzie, and political commentator Ali Miraj. Plus, the men who won't date older women. Hollywood heartthrob Leonardo Dicaprio has ditched his latest squeeze after she turned 25. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood in California. My Mark Meets guest is author and award-winning charity CEO Zoe Clark-Coates. She'll be talking about the tragedy of miscarriage. And in my big opinion, why the energy crisis is the West's own doing. I'll see you after the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Mark. It's 9 o'clock. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. NASA's attempt to launch its Artemis 1 moon rocket has been postponed for the second time in less than a week. The US Space Agency says its team was unable to fix a hydrogen leak in time for liftoff today. Its first attempt failed earlier on in the week because of other engine and technical issues. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson warns that it could be pushed back by more than a month.
Well, the mission management team is meeting this afternoon. They're going to look at it. They're going to see, is there still a possibility now, or are they going to have to roll back into the vehicle assembly building? If they decide that's the case, then it'll be an October launch.
Russia has shut down one of its main gas supply routes to Europe, stoking fears of fuel shortages this winter. The country's blaming German energy giant Siemens for a malfunction at its Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline, but Siemens says it was never asked to do the job. Moscow says it will stay shut until it can carry out repairs. It comes a day after G7 countries said they planned a price cap on Russian oil exports. Well, we're learning more about the pilot of a small plane who threatened to intentionally crash into a Walmart in the US state of Mississippi. Police say Corey Patterson stole a twin-engine plane at Tupelo Airport, where he worked there for 10 years, where he was responsible for fueling planes. Tracking data shows him flying around in circles over Tupelo for hours before landing in a field. Fortunately, nobody was injured. Tupelo Police Chief John Quaker says he's been charged with grand larceny and making terrorist threats.
We do anticipate that the federal government will proceed with federal charges in the very near future. That will take several days. We will run down the motivation. We will pursue any angle and avenue that there is, and we will work in conjunction with the FBI to do so.
Bus journeys in England will be capped at £2 from January to help families struggling with the rising cost of living. The Department for Transport says the scheme could see some passengers save more than £3 per ticket. The cuts, which were announced by the Transport Secretary, will run for 3 months until the end of March. Grant Shapps says the next Prime Minister may decide to keep the scheme running if it's popular. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight, my big opinion monologue in just 1 minute's time. Reacting to the big stories of the day, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, and political commentator Ali Miraj. Back to me, Adam, back to me. Basically, my team went to the pub before the show, for Wetherspoons. I was drinking coffee, writing the monologue. You can't get the staff these days. Now, in the show, we'll be asking my panel and my drunk director, should we give up our addiction to cheap fashion? Also, should skipping buying lunch be the best way to tackle the cost of living crisis? And the Hollywood stars who won't date older women. Why do men struggle to fall in love with women their senior? We'll get reaction from the Queen of US Showbiz and Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood, California. My Mark Meets guest is an amazing lady, author and award-winning charity CEO Zoe Clark Coates. She tragically lost 5 babies to miscarriage, but has used that devastation to help others who have gone through the same trauma. We'll hear her incredible story after 10. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. The best bit of my show is when you get in touch. And this programme has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So there you go, folks. 2 hours of lively debate, big entertainment, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. Now, I'm not one to make a drama out of a crisis. The terrifying heat wave we saw in July was no such thing. The high temperatures were the welcome manifestation of something called summer, about which most of the media appeared unaware, as they whipped us into a frenzy about how half the population would collapse with sunstroke if they left the house. None of the pessimistic hysteria around Project Fear and Brexit came to light either. A run on the pound, remember that? A flight of capital, a housing market crash, high interest rates. None of it happened. It's my view that Brexit is going pretty well, and we haven't even started yet. Don't take my word for it. New data from the HMRC and the Office for National Statistics revealed the UK's total exports in the last quarter of the year reached just under £100 billion. Wait for it, the highest level on record. And then, of course, there was the COVID hysteria around a virus that could be nasty and took too many from us, but which was mild or non-existent for most. What was, in my view, a diabolical and colossal overreaction to this bug is why we are now in the mess we're in. So, heat waves, Brexit, a novel respiratory virus, all heavily billed as Armageddon, but on closer inspection, were anything but. However, I hate to tell you, we are now in trouble. Old Vladimir Putin, the large table-addicted, germophobic, topless, horseback-riding freak show of a man, has switched off the Nord Stream 1 gas supply, blaming a leak. A leak, eh, Vladimir? Well, is that why you turned it off? I'll file that under the Meghan Markle School of Credibility. It's quite clear what he's up to. He's turning the screw on the West. By blocking supplies of gas upon which countries like Germany and Italy are so dependent, we will see wholesale gas prices spiral further. But you've got to understand that, hellish warmonger though he is, all of this is on us. Putin's power comes from the eco-zealots in the West who rejected the colossal reserves of shale, oil, coal and gas on its own shores, not least here in the UK, where we would now be comfortably energy independent if we had simply mined from our own resources. Something achieved by the Americans when they greenlit shale gas exploration over 10 years ago. To make matters worse, eco-zealots here and abroad even blocked investment in nuclear, a carbon-free, reliable and secure source of long-term energy. Just think how many nuclear power stations we could have built with the 34 billion quid that we spunked away on that pathetic test and trace system during the pandemic for a virus that was never going to be stopped and which has a survivability rate of over 99%. Well done, everyone. 34 billion quid. Now, I'm all for solar, wind and wave technology, but it was patently clear that a mix was going to be needed given the enormous cost of renewables and their temperamental and uneven performance. When the wind drops, the turbines stop spinning. On a cloudy day, the solar panels slip into standby. And dear old Angela Merkel, the most overrated politician in European history, proudly declared in 2011 that Germany was going to reject nuclear fuel. This, of course, rendered the Germans reliant on Vladimir Putin's gas, paying him billions to this day and effectively bankrolling his war machine. But it's not like they weren't warned. Donald Trump himself laid it out in no uncertain terms to the Germans when he was president in 2018. The West was so arrogant. They thought they could go green at a cost of tens of billions of pounds to their own citizens, whilst countries like China, India, Russia and Brazil continued to burn fossil fuels for fun. It was political and strategic folly on an unprecedented scale. Vladimir Putin is the symptom, but the woke West is the cause, worshipping at the altar of climate change. You know what they say, go woke, no smoke. So here's where we are. The Daily Mail today reporting that experts are saying energy rationing will happen this winter. People told not to cook until after 8 p.m. Pubs closing at 9 o'clock, a 3-day week for schools, care homes cancelling outings for residents, and swimming pools left unheated. Now, you know me, my glass is always half full. I seek good news where I can. I want this show to lift you, not grind you down. But frankly, with regards to the energy crisis, there's actually nothing that we can do. In time, absolutely, grant those fracking licenses, commission the nuclear power stations that we need, and pursue renewables. But for the next few months, we are powerless to avoid the spiralling cost of global energy prices. And here's the kicker. We haven't even got the money with which to help hard-pressed Brits heat their homes this winter. Let me remind you that people like myself were vilified for questioning lockdowns, printing money and borrowing £500 billion. I'm on record as saying at the time, what happens if we need that money for a future emergency? Well, here we are, folks, and the cupboard is bare. The truth is that it's just not an option for thousands of hospitality venues, care homes, schools and private dwellings to shoulder the cost. Take a look at this tweet from a restaurant owner. It's an absolute shocker. This chap says, my current energy bill for my tiny 22-cover restaurant is £2,928 a year. That's the old figure. This is my new quote, £22,000. So we've gone from three grand to 22 grand in a year. He goes on to say, unsure what to do next, but as a business, that cost would now be more than I pay in rent and more than I take some months. I simply don't have the money for this. Shocking and terrifying in equal measure. On this occasion, our next incoming Chancellor will, I'm afraid, have to return to the magic money tree and roll out a package of support for millions of Brits this winter that will be on the scale of the furlough scheme. Furlough itself was a disgrace because we should never have locked down and paid healthy people to stay at home and close once viable businesses. But an energy furlough scheme for the next few months is not just essential, but in my view, inevitable. But just remember how we got here. Failed eco-policies which have enriched and empowered tyrants like Putin and autocratic regimes like Saudi Arabia. And don't forget that we don't have the financial resources with which to comfortably tackle this crisis because we had a collective mental breakdown over a predominantly mild virus. But here's my note of optimism. We've got a new Prime Minister coming in. And I think it's time for a fresh approach and new ideas. Liz Truss is a doer, not a talker, and has been a dynamic force in every department in which she has served. Look, she's not the best public speaker, and she will make plenty of mistakes as she learns on the job. But she gets things done. I, for one, will give her the benefit of the doubt. And energy independence must be Liz Truss's #1 priority. And Britain is still an economic powerhouse with low unemployment and a talented, dynamic, creative and hard-working population. We continue to enjoy a huge capacity to borrow further with which to support the economy and the people in the months ahead. This time, it's justified. There's trouble brewing, folks. There are dark times ahead. A chill wind blows. But with brave and clear-sighted leadership and a commitment to never again repeat the mistakes of the past, we can make the best of a bad situation, navigate our way through what will be a challenging couple of years, and come out even stronger. But for now, if I were you, I'd invest in a duffel coat this Christmas. I do like a duffel coat. I think Paddington Bear had one of those, didn't he? Well, what do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? Mark at gbnews.uk. Have the woke West brought this cost of living crisis upon themselves? I'll get to your emails after the break. Reacting to my big opinion monologue and all of the big stories of the day are my brilliant panel of showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, and political commentator Ali Mirage. Great to have all three of you with me. Lisa, let me get started with you. Do you share my view that actually there's very little we can do about bringing down the cost of energy and the government are going to have to subsidise?
No, I absolutely agree with you, actually, Mark. It's quite terrifying what's coming. And I think one of the things that we've got to always remember is over the next year, there are people in our country, in the 5th or 6th wealthiest country in the world, whichever numbers we decide, that are going to be living in absolute poverty again. We've not seen those levels of absolute poverty for, 60 years? And there's going to be people in our country that are going to die just because they are too poor to live. And I think that's a sobering truth. I've got to say, I've got no faith in our government or the opposition, actually. I'm equally sceptical about both and the whole House of Westminster, that they actually understand the depth of the problem. I'm not sure that they do. So if you go back, in 2010, we had austerity. So in 2008, we had a banking crash that politicians throughout the world bailed out bankers and left that debt on the shoulders of the poorest. And since then, this is where we've been going historically. The wealthiest have sort of been getting away with things and the poorest have been shouldering the burden. And the poorest now are not in any kind of shape to deal with what's coming. And I think I know that this is a great show and we like to have a laugh, but I think when we start to think about the current crisis, it's not funny, is it?
It most certainly isn't. It's an absolute tragedy. As I said, terrifying and worrying in equal measure. Ali Mirage, how big might the scale of support be required this autumn, do you think, from the Treasury?
I think it's going to be a gargantuan level of support required. And I think that everything that Liz Truss has said in this leadership election, Rishi Sunak will feel very hard done by because he's been open about the challenges, particularly around inflation and providing support. And Liz Truss has been talking about no handouts, inverted commas.
Yeah.
And she's going to have to give massive handouts as soon as she gets in within a few weeks, because the reality is you can reverse the increase in national insurance. You can also reduce the green levies on energy bills. But the green levies on energy bills are going to yield about a saving of about £158 to the average household. I mean, you're talking about an increase, Mark, from the 1st of October of 80%, 80%, the average bill going up to just shy of £3,600. That could go up to £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 next year. It's going to be absolutely horrendous. People are going to need support. And let's be honest about the fundamentals of why we're here. Yes, the economy woke up after 2 years of hibernation on the back of COVID. That led to supply chain issues, an increase in commodity prices. But the fundamental reason why we're here is the war in Ukraine. Now, I'm not saying that the war, we should not support the Ukrainians. That's a whole separate topic. I think the West, by the way, made a lot of strategic tactical errors by NATO expansion, but that's a whole separate discussion for a separate day. And we have this tendency to make things into goodies and baddies and all the rest of it. But the point is, the Ukrainians should be supported. That's fine. But the way this has been framed, in my view, has been in a very lackluster way by politicians who have not framed it in a way as this is an economic war with Russia. Yes, the Ukrainians are dying on the battlefield, but we must also be in an economic war. If we honestly thought that we were going to impose a bunch of sanctions on Vladimir Putin, a man who's got very little to lose, and that he would not react by reducing gas supplies, what world were we living in? And the reason why we are facing such high energy prices is because the gas prices increase because the markets don't believe that Europe can heat itself over the winter to come. And you look at what's happened in Nord Stream 1, the gas supply is completely cut off at the moment. It was 20% of its capacity in the last few weeks. It's now completely cut off. You make an interesting point, Mark, in your opening monologue about security of supply. I think there are issues with fracking. I disagree with you completely on the climate change point. I yield to no one in my admiration, by the way, of you, Mark, but I think you've got it completely wrong on that. I do think climate change is an issue, and I think it's an issue because my family hail from Pakistan, by the way. A third of the country's underwater,
Terrible.
and thousands of people are losing their lives there, and it's an absolute nightmare. And I'm afraid it is climate change that is part of the problem here, and we need to fess up to it. Now, that does mean a massive investment in renewables, but also it means dealing with the baseload power issue, and you're quite right to say that we haven't been thinking further ahead. I mean, look, politicians need to solve what we call the energy trilemma, the question of cost, security of supply, and the effect on the environment. That is not an easy thing to do, and it requires long-term thinking. And you know, as well as I do, that the horizon of our politicians is 5 years. 5 years max. I mean, in the case of Liz Truss, 2 years.
Yep.
So that's where we are, Mark.
Well, indeed, I'm no climate change denier, but it's clear that we needed an energy mix. And I think that, as I say, we've been sort of worshipping here in the West at the altar of climate change, ignoring a lot of resources on our own shores. And we are now paying the price because we're using just as much gas and oil, except we're buying it from tyrants. Christopher Biggins, what is your thought on this? Because there is trouble brewing for the British people this winter, isn't it?
I get very upset. You turn on the television, you see housewives, women with children, fathers saying heating or eating. Now, how can that be possible in 2022 to choose between those two? Meaning that, for instance, they either have a cold house and have a Mars bar or a sausage, or they turn up the heating and don't eat anything. That is appalling. How can that happen in this day and age? It is an anathema to me. I just don't understand it. I mean, I don't think anything's going to help, too, on Monday when we find out who's going to be the new Prime Minister. And I agree with you totally. We don't have an opposition. We have nobody in power who can do something of this terrible, terrible situation we're in.
However, if we'd seen different policies, Christopher, over the last 2.5 years, we would have the money, the funds with which to subsidise people's heating. In fact, subsidising those fuel bills this winter would be a drop in the ocean compared to the $500 billion we spent on the, in my view, failed experiment of lockdowns. This is the point, Christopher, is it's a double whammy of Western reliance on Russian gas, plus us wasting cash trying to stop a virus which caught us anyway.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that virus turned into a cold. That's what it was. It was another thing that we had to add to the other things we get all over the years. I got it on the last day of my pantomime, and I couldn't go in, and I should have lied, because all I had was a cold. It was literally a cold, but I had to miss the show because that was the law.
But Christopher, just one thing, right? I know that Mark's got a particular view on this, and a lot of people have a view on COVID. Look, I don't think it was like a cold. Luckily, I didn't get it. But Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, who I'm no fan of, by the way, but I don't wish death on him, far from it, you know. I hope he's healthy and has a happy, long life. He nearly died on the back of COVID. It wasn't a cold at all, right? So everyone's body reacts differently to this, and to dismiss it as a cold, in my view, is irresponsible. Now, I'm not saying that lockdown should have lasted as long as they did, but I'm not a lockdown skeptic. I do think COVID was a serious thing. I do think it needed to be tackled. And yes, we did spend $400 billion on the back of it because basically the Chancellor took a big decision, which I think was right at the time, that if you close down an economy, which is a massive thing to do, people are going to need to be supported. Otherwise, they're going to be left destitute and without jobs. And yes, we did spend a lot of money on that. But the point here is we can still spend a lot of money now. The only issue is that it's going to be our kids and our grandkids that are going to have to pay for it because we're already at 100% debt to GDP ratio. Yes, we're not. That's sort of the average of the G7. But we don't want to be getting up to levels of Japan of 250% 60% debt to GDP. But the reality is we're going to have to borrow a shed load more money because Liz Truss is talking about tax cuts. So we're not going to be raising it via taxes. Yeah. So it's got to be paid for somewhere. People are not going to be able to pay their heating bills this winter.
Ali Miraj, can Liz Truss afford the tax cuts and to subsidise our heating bills this winter? Can she do both?
Well, the only way of doing it, Mark, I mean, look, governments only can raise money in three ways, right? They either tax you, they borrow, or they print money. You will see what printing money does, right? We've got double-digit inflation heading towards 18, 22%, take your pick. So that's not really viable. And by the way, her tax cuts could lead to an inflationary boom, as seen in the 1970s, right? So the reality is she's going to have to borrow a lot of money, billions of pounds, and who's going to pay for that? That is going to be basically mortgaged to our kids and our grandkids who are already facing intergenerational inequality right now, can't buy a house, feel that the social contract's broken down, that if you work hard and save that you would have a decent standard of living, better than your parents. They won't.
I think that social contract ultimately was kind of broken in 2008. I think the minute that they started...
You're right.
The minute that they started printing money, bailing bankers out and piling that debt onto austerity policies, onto the poorest, I think that social contract was definitely broken at that point. And I think where we're going now, I think we're almost like the end of an epoch, and we're going somewhere else. And I think with COVID and now the Ukraine war, I think we're almost sort of running down a hill of the end of an epoch.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And I was listening to Tracy Chapman's 1988 song talking about a revolution, and the words are very, very pertinent. She's saying poor people are going to rise up and take their share. Poor people are going to rise up and take what's theirs. And you're looking now at massive social strikes. Hopefully it does not lead to social unrest. But if you're facing bills you cannot pay, and by the way, I'm not advocating people not paying bills because that leads to a whole range of other issues in terms of your credit rating and stuff. But if people physically cannot pay their bills, what are you going to have? You're going to have people destitute and they're going to be desperate.
Why doesn't the whole population, though, not pay the bills? I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, Christopher, I think what should happen is...
I think people aren't going to pay.
But you see, the reality is, right, in my view, if I was running the economy, and I'm not, I mean, look, I'm open to offers. If Liz wants to give me a call, a quasi, move out of the way. Look, you should be raising taxes on those who can afford it, and you should be channeling support in terms of welfare payments or state support to the very poorest who need it, the 5 to 10 million households in this country that cannot bear this. And then deeper issue is you need to look at the cost of energy. At the moment, it's not linked at all to the cost of production. It's linked to the marginal cost of gas for the last unit you buy, which is totally and utterly bizarre. And even Dieter Helm, Professor Dieter Helm of Oxford, an energy expert, has said this whole system needs to be completely looked at. Regulation also needs to be looked at. But that's what I do.
Do you think...
Christopher, if you couldn't afford to pay your energy bill, would you refuse?
I think I would. Well, if you haven't got the money, how can you pay it? I mean, it's as simple as that. That's the logistically good look at it. Because, sorry?
Would you do what the Italians did and publicly burned their bills in a town centre this week?
Well, that's very theatrical. It would be a good thing. But I think there has to be some input from the public. I think we have to make some statement. We can't just rely on the governments that we don't trust. Actually working
I don't. I mean, the way that Liz Truss, and I accept that Mark, you're prepared to give her a chance, but everything that she has said so far, and she may only be saying this to the Conservative voter rather than the rest of the country, but everything that she is saying, she's not thinking about the poorest. No. Because when she starts to talk about tax cuts and with that term handout, I think she sounds mean, actually. I think she sounds quite mean and uncaring.
But you see, I think what's going to happen is that she's boxed herself into a position. She's going to have to row back from that. She is going to have to give handouts, inverted commas, which she was against. And therefore, she's not going to get any credit for it when she does it. But she's going to have to. There's going to have to be a huge fiscal event happening in the next few weeks because people are going to be left destitute in this country.
Yeah. Ali, briefly, you know your economics. Could you offer a ballpark figure of how much it would cost for the government to support businesses and private households this winter with their fuel bills. I mean, are we in the tens of billions here?
Yes, we are. Look, the figures, it depends on which plan you go for, right? I mean, Keir Starmer's plan was costed about 30 billion. That was apparently only going to last for about 6 months. I would say you're talking about tens of billions, probably hundreds of billions, because the other thing, Mark, is there's no end game in sight to this war, right? There's no negotiation happening. There's not even a ceasefire happening. So the reality is politicians need to get real and level with the public. If we are going to support the Ukrainians till the end, and by the way, Liz Truss has been very belligerent saying that Putin must fail. What does failure look like? What does it mean? How long does this last? It could be lasting years. And we're going to be facing penury unless the government steps up and supports people. And what does that mean? It means that future generations are going to have to pay for that.
It's an economic war, says Ali Miraj. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk in the news agenda with my brilliant panel. Should we give up our addiction to cheap fashion? Also, is skipping buying lunch the answer to the cost of living crisis? And the Hollywood stars who won't date older women. Why do some blokes have a problem with ladies their senior? I love an older woman. Ask Mrs. Dolan. My Mark Meets guest is the award-winning charity CEO, author, and a grief expert. She's been through multiple miscarriages, and she tells her incredible and moving story at 10. But next in the big question, should Harry and Meghan be stripped of their royal titles? We'll speak to the former royal editor of the Sun newspaper, no less. Get the kettle on if you can afford it. I'll see you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
David has reacted to my big opinion monologue. I believe the woke West have brought this energy crisis upon themselves with eco-zealotry. We now don't have the money to help people with their energy bills because we spent £500 billion trying to stop a seasonal respiratory virus. Well done, everyone. Well, this is from David, who says, "Hi, Mark. I, like you, hope that Liz Truss does do something in terms of business funding, but also on the EU. If we do not get any movement on no protocol, we should trigger Article 16. And if they start a trade war, just cancel Brexit and go to WTO and stop all EU fishing in UK waters." David, thank you so much for that. Adrian on My Big Opinion says, "Firstly, the world's governments had to bail out the banking system caused by Bill Clinton, not because the banks were getting away with it, but because of the effect of the total collapse of the world financial system would make the current crisis look like a tea party." Adrian goes on to say he's been warning about this for so long now. Well, we'll get to more of your opinions shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. But first, this. It's time for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, after yet another explosive interview with US media in which Meghan Markle compared herself to Nelson Mandela, she quotes, "When you married into this family, we rejoiced in the streets the same as we did when Mandela was freed from prison." What a line. Well, as well as this, she's poured yet more scorn on the royal family, casting doubt on Harry's future relationship with his father, Prince Charles, and further unfounded allegations of racism in the British media. So is it time for Harry and Meghan to be stripped of their royal titles? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome the former royal editor of The Sun, a very good friend of mine. He's also the biographer of Prince Harry. It's Duncan Larkham, and all the way from New York, the heart of where this is happening, Hollywood's go-to entertainment reporter who spans a career of over 25 years, Nelson Aspen. Nelson, can I start with you? Has the halo slipped for Meghan in America?
Well, I'm not an expert on the royals, but I'm an expert on celebrities. And these people are very much celebrities. So looking at them as just stars, not as potential royals or former royals or wannabe royals, but just looking at them as celebrities, I think a certain fatigue has set in until whatever the next reinvention will be, Mark.
Well, yes, of course. And that's what it's all about. That's the name of the game. So, Duncan Larkham, more pressure on this couple, all of which they've brought on themselves.
Hi, Mark. Yes, I think that's a fair comment. I mean, we thought perhaps there was a little bit of a ceasefire over the summer since we saw Harry and Meghan the last visit to the UK for the Queen's Jubilee. But suddenly, bizarrely again, Mark, right on the eve of what was Princess Diana's 25th anniversary of her death, suddenly Meghan was on the front pages with the first of her big podcast deal from Spotify. And then, as you say, this 6,400-word interview in a magazine no one seems to have heard of over this side of the country. A very provocative move at a time when they know full well they're about to come back to Britain this week. And being on the front pages seems to be something that Meghan and Harry certainly enjoy.
Well, indeed. I mean, do you think that Harry is on board with all of these revelatory statements, Duncan?
Well, of course, our source for this is Donald Trump, whose opinion is that Harry is the most pistol-whipped, I don't think he said pistol, but the most whipped husband in the world. Look, I think it's a bit worrying because what we also saw in the Spotify and again in the interview she gave to the magazine was Prince Harry made 2 cameo appearances as though, you know, he just can't resist coming down from his bedroom when Meghan's working downstairs. And you sort of think, well, that's not an accident. Don't forget, we saw him in August last year juggling outside the window whilst Meghan was launching an initiative. It does begin to make you wonder what on earth Harry is thinking. He is, whether he likes it or not, he's coming across now as a bona fide puppet on Meghan's string.
Mm. Does he love her, Duncan?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I've worked covering the royal family for a long time, but I don't think anyone's got the right to discuss whether a husband loves a wife. That's their business. What I can tell you...
Yeah, go on.
Oh, go on. Sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, no. What you can tell me, if a legendary Fleet Street hack says what I can tell you, then you bloody listen.
Oh, no. It's a good job I can remember my point. Now, I think what you can remember with Harry and Meghan, of course, is that, you know, we've seen Harry, a popular, fun-loving royal. The public could not get enough of Prince Harry. What we see now is a Prince Harry who tells us he's happy, but hasn't seemed to have told his face. I've never seen him looking this miserable, and it doesn't look like it's getting better anytime soon.
And I appreciate your discretion about whether we can answer a question, does he love his wife? You're quite right, and that's very, very personal. Only he knows the answer to that. However, you can speculate as to whether he is enthralled to her or whether... she's got him under the thumb. Having profiled this man at great length in your brilliant biography of Harry, is he somebody that has a personality trait that makes him easily manipulated? Is he somebody that can be pushed around, from your knowledge?
Well, I mean, one thing I can say on that really is that Harry isn't age 19, 20, 25. He was a very eligible bachelor, and he was a prince. But when he had girlfriends, interestingly, he was very much the sort of subordinate. He wasn't a knight in shining armor. He was sometimes a little bit... I think his first girlfriend, Chelsea, described him, and friends described him sometimes as a bit of a puppy. And of course, then with Cressida Bonas, which is really Harry's only other significant relationship in his life other than Chelsea and, of course, Meghan. And she dragged him along to Glastonbury. And there was poor old Prince Harry wearing a very strange outfit, bohemian sort of Glastonbury-style chinos and a jacket. And he looks so out of place. He is a prince that is easily led, but he still insists he is the one behind this. It's just increasingly looking like Meghan is using her platform that the royal family have given her to become extremely wealthy, extremely famous, and frankly, become queen of the town, of the city that she grew up and that she tried to succeed in all her career.
Nelson Aspen, you have your finger on the pulse of American popular culture. Where do you think American public opinion is in relation to this couple?
I think they're completely fascinated by Harry and Meghan, but as in any celebrity couple that stays together, mind you, I'm not talking about a Brangelina that breaks up, but any celebrity couple that stays together, there has to be one spouse who is the star, and the other has to walk a few feet back. That's just the way it is. You can look at Warren Beatty and Annette Bening, or James Brolin and Barbara Streisand. There are George and Amal Clooney. You know, one person has to stay a few feet behind, and I think what we see is Meghan leads the charge. She has been a workaholic, career-focused actress since her very youngest days. I mean, that's well chronicled how she sort of took on advertising moguls for equal rights for females. And her father, he taught her work ethic. He was a very well-respected, admired, and long-running director of photography and lighting at an American soap opera. She has had that work ethic instilled in her. She is driven, and she is leading the charge. And I think that's what captivates people, because she's taken the reins.
You know how divided America is politically at the moment, Nelson. You've got the red states, the blue states, Republicans, and the Democrats, the sort of woke liberals, as they're called, on the left, and then your rather more traditional conservative Americans. Do you think public opinion in relation to the couple is split along those lines? Is it the woke warriors who love Meghan and Harry?
It has certainly evolved that way. As you mentioned before, with former President Trump's comments about Harry being sort of whipped by Meghan, that does polarize people, because the people that want to support Trump will go along with Trump's opinion. The people that don't want to support Trump will go against his opinion. So for no lack of a better reason, they have become politicized, Mark. Do you not detect a growing irritation in America towards Meghan Markle, though, Nelson? Because that's certainly been reported in recent weeks. People are certainly irritated by any celebrity that's overexposed, and she's everywhere.
Now, Nelson, what would happen, because I want to ask both of you whether this couple should be stripped of their royal titles. They can't be excavated from the family. That's not how families want. I think that is not something that should happen. But it seems odd that this couple are so critical of the institution from which they come, which is the royal family, the British monarchy, and yet they keep the titles. So, Nelson, what would it do to their bankability as stars if they were no longer the Duke and Duchess of Sussex?
That's right. I'm not sure what purpose the titles serve for them in terms of PR or celebrity quotient. At that point, you know, we still talk about Fergie, Duchess Fergie. We still refer to her in royal ways. We will always think about them royally, whether they have the titles or not. So I can't speak to say what is the right decision, but I don't think they need the titles to maintain their celebrity status.
Well, that's interesting that you've said that. So you don't think it will make a difference because it's baked into their brand that they are royal. That's really interesting, Nelson. However, do they need to keep talking about the royal family in order to stay relevant? Is it their meal ticket?
Absolutely. Well, yes, because the other things they have been trying really haven't worked. Everybody wants to hear the royal gossip, the royal news, the royal connections, the stories. And as much as they're trying admirably to cultivate other things, at the end of the day, that's what the general public is hungering for, Mark.
So, Mr. Larkham, I want to ask you, Duncan, whether you think that this royal couple are now playing with fire. Will we get to the point where the firm, which is how the royal family are referred to in the media, will we get to the point where they do strip them of their titles?
Well, I think I completely agree with what Nelson says. I mean, in many ways, stripping them of their titles isn't going to make the blindest bit of difference. And actually, in Meghan's magazine interview, there was a point at which she was referred to as a princess. And that wasn't even corrected. It was just as though she was. She's not a princess. So, those titles, it was always Princess Diana, even though they stripped Princess Diana of just about everything that they could. The Queen is a head of an organisation, the institution, the firm. She's the boss. She had to sack Prince Andrew, although she didn't take away his title of Prince or Duke of York. And she's had to intervene historically with Harry and Meghan, wishing them well, but taking away HRH. It is now, I think, almost inevitable that the Queen has no more choice but to start to say enough is enough, Harry and Meghan. Good luck in your new life, but we have to take away, as the head of this organisation, as the boss, the Queen now has to act, I think, because Harry and Meghan are simply selling the royal brand. Good luck to them. But why on earth are we still calling them Duke and Duchess of Sussex? That, for me, doesn't make sense, and I don't think they should be allowed to use it.
What do you think might be the timeline for that, Duncan? When might that happen? Are we talking in the next sort of 12 to 18 months?
Look, it's quite speculative, but I think that it's almost inevitable they will be stripped of their titles if this sword of Damocles, if you like, Prince Harry's memoir is due to hit the shelves possibly by Christmas, maybe early next year. The Queen does not know what is in that. And I would imagine probably for now, there won't be any movement until that book's out and they know. I mean, surely then Harry and Meghan have got to look somewhere other than bleating on about the royal family in order to command salaries that most people on this planet would only dream of having. Winning lotteries several times over is a pretty good start in your married life as independent people.
Duncan, do come and join us in the studio again. It's been far too long. The former royal editor of The Sun newspaper, who's written a brilliant page-turning biography of Prince Harry. I highly recommend it. I read it during the second lockdown. I had to do something. And my sincere thanks to an absolute legend of US showbiz broadcasting, Hollywood's go-to entertainment reporter who spans a career of over 25 years, though it looks like 5 with that young complexion. Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you.
The brilliant Nelson Aspen. Brilliant. Well, more US showbiz news from the Queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, in the next hour. Well, we put out a poll on Twitter asking, should Harry and Meghan be stripped of their royal titles? 93% say yes, 7% say no. That'll be a landslide. Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is the award-winning charity CEO, author, and one of the UK's top grief experts, a woman that's been through several miscarriages. She talks about the tragedy of miscarriage and how to navigate grief. Zoe Clark-Coates tells her incredible and inspiring story just after 10. Plus, we've got my take at 10. That's right. Double monologue, folks. That's right. I'll be talking about how a cashless society is the war against people power. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. Starbucks have started it. Wake up and smell the coffee! And
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
There continues to be a big reaction to my big opinion monologue. This is about the energy crisis, which I believe is the making of the woke West. Plus, we don't have the resources with which to help people with their bills because we borrowed £500 billion trying to stop a virus. Well, Greg says, why is it politicians that always won't accept the obvious, like their mistakes? There never was a pandemic. The true figures say so. Well, I don't agree with you there. I think there was a pandemic, but it was one to which I believe we overreacted. But Greg, thank you for your thoughts on that. Get to more of your views shortly. Reacting to all of the big stories of the day are my brilliant panel of showbiz legend, actor and broadcaster Christopher Biggins, author and academic with an outrageous tan, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, looking gorgeous.
I think I'm just hot.
And the ever debonair potential Chancellor of the Exchequer. We can parachute him into a safe seat. Political commentator Ali Miraj. Now, research shows that 9 in 10 young people opt for cheap clothing. Known as fast fashion, many household brands are famous for their cheaply produced, cheaply priced and poor quality replicas of popular outfits. Although they might be the height of fashion, these brands are infamous for their exploitative working practices and terrible impact on the environment. You can get a T-shirt in some shops for £2. So it begs the question, should we give up our addiction to cheap fashion? Well, look, Ali, you won. This is expensive fashion.
Look, I would rather buy fewer items but better quality. I mean, that's my thing. I know people want to keep up with the latest trends, and I understand all that. But also, the younger generation is much more aware about environmental impact, but also social impact as well. I mean, people working in sweatshops to produce some of this stuff. And I do think that we waste a lot of money buying. And also, it's a deeper issue about constantly being on this treadmill, constantly, all the time, of purchasing, buying, throwing away, recycling, buying again. I don't know if that leads to happiness. Look, that's just my view. I'm not saying I should impose my view to others. But I do think we need to be more mindful of this. And it's interesting that the research is showing this, Sheffield Hallam researchers have done this work, saying that boys are less focused on the issue than girls, but yet are buying better, more sustainable fashion because it's cooler. It just happens to be that the boys are ahead of the girls on this. Girls are more attuned to the issue, but 90% of people, these youngsters of the younger generation, are buying goods that are not sustainable.
Well, it seems, Christopher, that we have a culture in which young people, and plenty of older people as well, are buying clothes with the express intention of wearing them 2 or 3 times before discarding them.
That's disgraceful. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, you know, now we're in a terrible problem with money. We should be looking at mixing and matching. I mean, it's very easy to do. You look in your wardrobe and you think, well, and I hate buying clothes for a start. I loathe going to a shop. I loathe people coming up to me and saying, yes, can I help you? Because
also, everyone wants to dress big in.
Well, you know, funny enough, in theatre land, as designers love big people like myself because it looks good, because they can see a costume, you know, a period costume or a modern costume.
Barrel-chested?
well, sort of, yes.
Swarthy.
Swarthy. And, you know, and I'm very good in a period outfit. But, I mean, I think you should wear what you feel comfortable in. And look at... You look marvellous.
Yeah, I'm not young, though.
Well, you are. You're not... It doesn't matter. You're not...
But do you know what? I come from an age... So, I mean, obviously, I was growing up in the 80s. And in the 80s, you know, you didn't have a lot of money, actually.
No.
Young people didn't have a lot of money.
And clothes were expensive?
Yeah, and they were
relative
expensive.
terms.
So you'd have a few bits, perhaps from the market, but then you'd have a few second-hand bits. And, you know, God love us, we used to have family members that could sew. I mean, that's gone now. You know, I left school at 16 and went to work in a factory. So I started to learn the skills of that. My mum could throw me something together in, you know, an hour. You know, that's all gone now. I mean, I teach a class on the sociology of fashion. And one of the things that we do is we look at sort of this fast fashion, Boohoo, Pretty Little Things and others.
Primark.
Yeah, well, we look at that and we start to think about what's driving it. And a lot of my students start to talk about Instagram and the way that influencers, you know, there are influencers that keep pushing this. You know, for example, Love Island, whenever there is a Love Island programme on, afterwards you can go on the app and it tells you what everyone was wearing and where you can buy them.
Well, for sure. In fairness to young people, there is also a counterculture now in which young people are going to eBay and Gumtree and buying vintage stuff. And then I think, is there a company called, is it B-Pop or D-Pop?
D-Pop, yeah.
And this is, I mean, my son's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
16.
What happens there?
And what you do is you buy items like a pair of Converse trainers and knew they'd be 60 or 70 quid and he gets them for a tenner.
Is that because they're second-hand?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a very good idea. I mean, I think you should be able to go somewhere and perhaps change your clothes. Yeah. You know, take in this lovely blue jacket I'm wearing and get a red one. You know,
well, I mean, that would make a fortune on eBay. To be honest, that jacket, Christopher Biggins' jacket, would break the internet.
Don't you think we need to start focusing back on the high street again, though? You know, and we need to start to think about physically going into shops and physically, you know, trying things on again, rather than sort of going on Instagram, picking an outfit that someone's wearing and buying the whole thing.
So the internet has turbocharged fast fashion.
Well, it kind of has, I think so.
And that's why the high street is dying.
Yeah.
Because nothing is happening there. You go down a high street anywhere and shops are closed.
Well, we discussed it with my team earlier, who are young and incredibly well-dressed, and they were actually saying that some of the high street brands that sell cheap fashion actually throw away items that have been returned because it costs them more to clean and press returned items. It just goes into landfill.
Yeah.
So, by the way, and then, of course, we have charity shops, Ali. And this is, I mean, for me, it's my hobby.
Yeah.
And anywhere I go in the UK, the first thing I do is hit the local charity shop.
Of course.
Are you wearing something from a charity shop tonight?
No, this is all Black Friday from TK Maxx.
But TK Maxx have got some great bargains as well.
They're very good, TK Maxx.
No, but charity shops as well. I mean, I've over the years bought a couple of things from charity shops that have been excellent stuff. I mean, I bought a beautiful Hermes tie from a charity shop in St John's Wood from Oxfam there. I mean, it's still expensive, to be honest, even if it was a charity shop.
So they knew what it was, did they?
You can pick up good bargains in charity shops.
Do you ever haggle in the charity shop?
No.
I
wouldn't do that.
I love haggling.
Not in a charity shop, though.
No, but I wish I could go to a store like, let's say, Marks and Spencer's and say, look, that's a very nice suit, but it's £150. Can I have it for 90?
Yeah, my dad does that with cash. He's always done it.
With cash?
Yeah, he'll go, what... Because, again, you know, he doesn't understand the modern world. He'll go, what is it for cash? And people are, like, looking at him going, cash? What's that?
Yeah,
no.
That's it.
Well, people hate cash nowadays.
Don't do haggling. Well, it's funny that you should mention that, Christopher, because in my Take at 10 in just 3 minutes' time, why cash is still king despite Starbucks deciding that some of their stores are to go cashless. I believe it's a war against people power. We'll discuss that shortly. And my Mark Meets guest is an incredible lady, an award-winning charity CEO, author, and one of the UK's top grief experts. She's had several miscarriages. She tells her incredible and inspiring story. Zoe Clark-Coates, MBE. You won't want to miss it. Plus more from my panel, including the papers, live at 10:30. See you shortly.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So much to come. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight in my Take at 10 in just 2 minutes' time. Why is a cashless society being planned? It's on the horizon, many say. Starbucks are rolling it out in some of their stores. I believe it's a war on people power. So my monologue all about the cashless society next. You won't want to miss it. Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30. With reaction from top academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, top political commentator Ali Miraj, and showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. So lots to get through, a very big hour to come. But first, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Mark. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. NASA's attempt to launch its Artemis 1 moon rocket has been postponed for the second time in less than a week. The US Space Agency says its team was unable to fix a hydrogen leak in time for liftoff today. Its first attempt failed earlier on in the week because of other engine and technical issues. The Chief Operating Officer at NASA, Jim Freese, says they will not launch until they're ready.
The confidence to do another launch attempt today was born out of the fact that we understood the hydrogen leaks that we had on Monday. Those are different than the leak that we had today. In terms of scale, one was in the same place, but today was a different signature. And we understood the engine issue. So we were confident coming into today. But as the administrator said, we're not going to launch till we're ready, which means we're going to step through these things.
Russia has shut down one of its main gas supply routes to Europe, stoking fears of fuel shortages this winter. The country's blaming German energy giant Siemens for a malfunction at its Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline, but Siemens says it was never asked to do the job. Moscow says it will stay shut until it can carry out repairs. It comes a day after G7 countries said they planned a price cap on Russian oil exports. A pilot who stole a small plane and threatened to crash it into a Walmart in Mississippi has been charged with grand larceny and making terrorist threats. Police say Corey Patterson stole a twin-engine plane at Tupelo Airport. He worked there for 10 years, where he was responsible for fueling planes. Tracking data shows him flying around in circles over Tupelo for hours before landing in a field. Fortunately, nobody was injured. Tupelo Police Chief John Quaker called it a crime of opportunity.
We do anticipate that the federal government will proceed with federal charges in the very near future. That will take several days. We will run down the motivation. We will pursue any angle and avenue that there is. And we will work in conjunction with the FBI to do so.
Bus journeys in England will be capped at £2 from January to help families struggling with the rising cost of living. The Department for Transport says the scheme could see some passengers save more than £3 per ticket. The cuts, which were announced by the Transport Secretary, will run for 3 months until the end of March. Grant Shapps says the next Prime Minister may decide to keep the scheme running if it's popular. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
A very warm welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests and always big opinions. Reviewing tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp, our top academic, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, top political commentator Ali Miraj and showbiz legend, actor and broadcaster Christopher Biggins. My Mark Meets guest is waiting in the wings, author and award-winning charity CEO Zoe Clark-Coates, who will talk about the tragedy of miscarriage. It's so common. How do we tackle that grief? Lots to get through, a big hour to come. Don't forget the papers live at 10:30. It's Sunday's papers. Lots of politics in there. You won't want to miss it. But first, this. It's been revealed that a number of branches of Starbucks are to go cashless in the months ahead. It seems to be a policy linked to their franchise partners and certainly not a majority of their stores. Many people will welcome the news. It may speed up service at the counter so that you can get your hands on that first latte of the day all the more quickly. And personally, I love paying with my phone or contactless, but only where cash is an option too. But this promise of a more convenient experience via cashless payments only is fool's gold. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. Although Starbucks stress they have no plans to go cashless across all of their stores, this kind of move reflects a wider campaign at government and corporate level to kill cash altogether. As we saw with creeping COVID measures, do you remember when wearing a mask or vaccination was just a gentle suggestion but became an instruction? Well, I think we'll see much of the same with how we pay for goods and services. As with the pandemic measures, the push for a cashless society is an attack on people power. If you have cash, your spending habits cannot be traced, your funds cannot be frozen in the way that they can with a digital currency. Don't forget, tin pot dictator Justin Trudeau, Canada's tyrannical premier, froze the bank accounts of truckers protesting vaccine mandates. He couldn't have done that with cash. In terms of a cashless society, all roads lead to China. It's the worst-case scenario, I'll give you that, the thick end of the wedge. Chinese citizens are part of what's called a social credit system, in which people's money is controlled digitally by the government. They've got virtual money in their virtual bank account, access to which is linked to good behaviour. And with facial recognition cameras everywhere, the public can lose access to their money for the most minor indiscretion. If someone is spotted littering or walking home drunk, not being up to date with their vaccines or guilty of some other perceived crime, this fully digitised system will punish them immediately by stopping them paying for goods in a supermarket, for example, or from buying a train ticket. Welcome to hell. With a cashless society, the control is transferred from the people to corporations and the state. And in a cashless society, how can you give your nephew a tenner for their birthday? Or leave a couple of pound coins for that waiter or waitress that served you so nicely in a cafe? How can you help out a homeless person that needs a few quid to get by? What about the wonderful informality of a retired neighbour cleaning your windows or doing a bit of gardening and receiving a crisp £20 note as a thank you? A cashless society will spell the end of the informal, discretionary economy. Cash is human. Cashless is inhuman. Come rain or shine, if you've got some cash on you, you're secure. You're the master or mistress of your own destiny, which is why creepy globalists like Klaus Schwab, the leader of the undemocratic cabal of technocrats called the World Economic Forum, They hate cash so much because it gives you power. Remember, this guy's catchphrase is that you will own nothing and you'll be happy. This nutter, who wouldn't look out of place in a Bond film, wants to create a dystopian world government run by an out-of-touch and privileged elite. Not on my watch. We've seen our personal autonomy challenged by lockdowns, stopping us from leaving the house, going to work, or deciding who we see. We've seen bodily autonomy attacked by vaccine mandates. The state will decide what goes into your body, not you. And if we allow a cashless society to happen, that will be the end of your financial autonomy as well. Cash is king, always has been, always will. Beware the outlets offering the snake oil convenience of cashless, and fight this at every turn. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. That said, I do like Starbucks. Single shot latte, lovely. Sugar-free, please. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, I'm delighted to welcome the author and award-winning charity CEO Zoe Clarke-Coates. After tragically losing 5 babies, Zoe decided to use her 20 years of experience in the business and charity sector, plus her counselling qualifications, to help support anyone who suffers baby loss. She's also written 4 books: Saying Goodbye, The Baby Loss Guide, Beyond Goodbye and Pregnancy After Loss. She's one of the UK's top experts in grief and a remarkable lady who was awarded an MBE for services to the baby loss community and improvement of bereavement care. Zoe Clarke-Coates, welcome to GB News.
Thank you for having me on.
Can you tell me about the unique pain of baby loss?
Yeah, it is quite unique, and I think that's because it's so misunderstood and often not talked about. For many people, they go through baby loss in private, in their home setting. And so if people don't know you're pregnant in the first place, it's really hard to tell people you've lost. And so many people suffer in silence.
Well, indeed. And the issue is with miscarriage, for example, that we just don't talk about it very much, and yet it's extraordinarily common.
It is. Around 1 in 4 people will go through the loss of a baby, which is a huge statistic. But yet we don't talk about it. But we're not really comfortable talking about loss at all here in the UK. We're just not comfortable talking about death.
Yeah, I mean, is there an element to which women are sort of gaslit in relation to baby loss, that it's a case of, you know what, stiff upper lip, get on with it?
I think it is. I think it really is. And I think that's often because it's been treated as a medical incident and something that you can just get over and in time you'll just feel better again, when actually you're completely changed after going through any sort of baby loss. It does change you forever, and you don't want to get back to who you were. You're a new person on the other side of loss. And so we do need to get better at talking about it.
So tell me your story.
Yeah, so we have lost 5 babies, which I know you've already stated. We lost 3 babies before we had our first daughter, who got to stay, and then we lost another 2 children after that. And it was through that we realised how people don't talk about loss, people don't talk about baby loss, and the fact that so many people were feeling what we did, which was that we were all alone, that nobody understood, nobody got it, and it was a taboo subject that we needed to keep private.
Tell me about the first time it happened, because this is the first time you conceived, and just the assumption is that's it, we've got the positive pregnancy test, and you know, you don't really take miscarriage or baby loss into account, do you? You just assume. You know it's going to be a bumpy ride and it's going to be a long 9 months, but you expect a baby at the end of it.
You absolutely do, and I think that goes down to the education as well. We're just not taught about loss in school, so we think that once we've made a decision to have a baby, that baby is going to get to stay. We certainly aren't prepared to say goodbye to them. So our first loss, as you say, was we went into it innocently, expecting everything to be okay. And
very excited and very happy.
Very excited. And tragically, we lost that first baby. And we hadn't told anybody we were expecting.
Was it pre the 3-month
It was pre the 3-month period. And I guess we just thought, we've gone through it, but it won't happen again. So it was the second loss that really threw our world into turmoil, because once we journeyed through it yet again, it wasn't a one-off incident. Here we were defeating the stats that it might happen once, but actually it shouldn't happen again. And here it was happening all over again a second time. And it was then that I thought, I don't even know if we can carry on trying. How can we go through this heartache and this grief and pain another time? We did try again and tragically lost that third baby. And after that, I was very much, I don't think we can do it again. I just don't think we can try again. Thankfully, this decision was almost taken out of my hands, because then when I found out I was pregnant again, and that baby got to stay, which was just so wonderful. And I'm just so glad that we didn't stick with that decision of never trying again.
What is the process of mourning a miscarriage, a lost baby?
Well, for everybody, it's very different. Every loss is so unique. For us, every loss was very different. Loss before having children that we got to raise was different to losing children after we'd had our daughter. We were very aware of what we'd lost, and we were grieving for our daughter's siblings that we lost as well. Yeah. So every loss was very different, but each of it was lonely, heartbreaking. It felt like it was the end of the world, and it felt like we would never, ever experience joy again. I'm very glad that we did. But in those darkest times, you really do feel very hopeless and like nothing will get you through it.
And with miscarriage, there isn't, I mean, all grief is just several, any number of shades of tragic. Yeah. But with miscarriage, you don't have the normal closure, the process of saying goodbye to somebody, which would be perhaps, an older person that's poorly and you know that the writing's on the wall, or you have a funeral and then you have a cemetery that you can visit or you can pay your respects. You don't get any of that with a miscarriage.
Well, for some you do, especially if it's a later loss, and then you do maybe have a funeral and a place to visit. But actually it is, as you say, very different to another family member loss, because no one else in the family has memories of that person. The memories are between you and your partner and that child.
So actually that's interesting. So is there a sort of a stage at which, if there's been a miscarriage during the 9-month term, is there a stage at which you can have a funeral?
You can at any point.
Right.
So it's down to the family, but often people are made to feel almost silly for having a funeral for an earlier baby loss, but actually it's totally personal and down to people's own decisions of whether they want that or they feel they'll benefit it. However, because most people are in this horrible valley of grief, often you don't even think about those decisions at the time. You're just sort of functioning on auto drive. So what you may feel you would benefit from, you're not in the best place to make those decisions often.
Have you reflected on how it impacts the father? Because, I mean, clearly it's a physical and mental, emotional trauma for mum, above and beyond anything else. But it impacts Dad as well, doesn't it?
It does. It impacts the whole family. So the partner, siblings, grandparents, everybody can be deeply affected.
And Dad's probably told, get on with it, mate. It's not you this has happened to.
Absolutely. And a big part of our work as a charity with Saying Goodbye and my government work is very much saying partners matter, that they shouldn't be forgotten. They're part of the process. They're grieving for their baby, their child too. And so we need to be offering support to both parties. And there's a scary stat that's around 70% of relationships break down after losing a baby. So it's one of the number one
reasons. That's a double
reason,
tragedy, isn't it?
A double tragedy. And it's that first domino goes down. And then often so many other factors in a person's life is so affected after.
It would be ridiculous to feel guilty that the child you were carrying has passed away. But I would have thought that guilt comes into it.
It does, because often society makes you feel like you're responsible.
Oh, I did something wrong, I went jogging, or I ate a hamburger, or God knows what. I watched EastEnders.
Yeah, and while research is great and absolutely needed, and we need more of it, as soon as you see a headline saying this could prevent more loss, you're thinking, well, did I do that? So could have I played a part in saving my baby's life? So around every corner, there's
and we
another
don't want to go there, do we? You do not want to go to victim shaming when it comes to miscarriage.
Certainly don't, but people do, and people often, as you say, blame themselves, even though they're very rarely responsible.
And also, it's human nature to seek a reason. It's like, oh yeah, well, do you remember when this happened or that happened, or you went to the fireworks, or God knows what? And I think perhaps maybe we shouldn't try to rationalise these things. It happened, and you just try to move on or recover from it.
I think it's part of society, again, that we try to find reasons for everything. And that's part of our way of feeling in control. If we can find a reason for it, maybe we can prevent it next time. So it's natural to want to find a reason, but as you say, often there isn't. But there's so many platitudes around grief and baby loss, like it's happened once, it probably won't happen again, or they're in a better place now. And all of these common sayings actually compound people's grief, and they fear talking about it in case people make them feel worse.
Yeah, for sure. Look, Biggins tells me that your two girls are amazing, and he'd know. And so congratulations, and your husband's outside as well. You've come through from the Cotswolds. You're an amazing person. You're an MBE. That must have been a great, great honour to receive that.
It was an absolutely huge honour. I think you go into this work to change things for people. You don't expect any sort of recognition. So to have your work acknowledged is a beautiful thing, yeah.
What would you say to anyone that's going through the tragedy of miscarriage as we speak?
I'd say talk about it. Whatever those around you say, keep talking about it. Know that the support, the fact that you feel all alone right now, you don't need to feel that way because there's others who have gone through it. So just ask for support and it's available.
You're a best-selling author as well, charity CEO. What's the charity called?
It's called Saying Goodbye, part of the Mariposa Trust. Yeah.
Brilliant, and that's the same name as your book, Saying Goodbye. Which I believe we've got a screenshot of. We've also got the Baby Loss Guide, Beyond Goodbye, and your most recent Pregnancy After Loss. Have you got another book in you?
I have. My next book is a children's book to help children through grief.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you're an amazing lady, an amazing mum as well, and what a privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you.
My sincere thanks to the remarkable Zoe Clark Coates, MBE. Don't forget the MBE. If I was an MBE, I'd be telling everyone I'd probably have a tattoo made. Lots more to come. At 10:30, the papers. At exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. But next, US news from the Queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Leonardo Dicaprio, the actor, won't date anyone over 25. What's his problem? See you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On the subject of the cashless society, Gary says, I was in a Starbucks a while ago and everyone was ordering grandest lattes and espressos and cappuccinos when a senior lady rather nervously came to the counter and simply asked for a cup of tea and wanted to pay in cash. She looked bewildered, but if they hadn't accepted her cash, I'm sure she would have not understood what was happening. Cash should always be with us, says Gary. That's a big reaction to my take at 10. Ben in our digital team has already cut a video of my big opinion monologue about the energy crisis, and the take at 10 is coming to Twitter soon. Just pop to @GBNews on Twitter for a good old catch-up. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
I'm loving the TK Maxx suit, Mark.
God bless you for that. I love a Black Friday sale. Now, Kinsey, let's talk about Leonardo Dicaprio, one of the most eligible bachelors in the world.
Is he still, though? I don't know if he still has that sex appeal that he did 25 years ago when he was in Titanic. But yeah, you and I've actually talked about this before. His last girlfriend on her 25th birthday, we joked that her time was almost up. And how much power do we have, Mark? I'm starting to feel kind of bad.
Yes, indeed, there are some dark arts at play. So he has a track record of dating younger women, and when they reach about 25, they face the chop.
Well, yeah, some of my favorite jokes on the internet are there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and Leonardo DiCaprio breaking up with his girlfriend when she turns 25. Another one is Titanic turns 25 this year, which means DiCaprio no longer wants to be in it. That's a little racy, but still seems kind of accurate. We're reading that he has a new girlfriend in London, perhaps. She's 22 years old. She's actually studying right now, a Ukrainian model. She's actually studying right now to become a business lawyer, to take over inevitably her family's pharmaceutical company. So this one might be a little too smart for Leo, honestly, Mark. But her name is Maria Bergava. So that's something to keep our eyes on.
So he's dating a Ukrainian model, doing his bit for the war.
Oh, that's exactly what I saw when I first saw that line. I thought, is this his contribution? Okay, I get that. What a great life.
That's it. He's just fighting for freedom. And she does sound like an illustrious young woman, although at the age of 22, that means she's got a 3-year contract.
That's right. The final countdown. It's on right now.
Is he still a bankable star in Hollywood? Because he is a talented actor, isn't he?
I think he's such a fun watch. I do love Leonardo DiCaprio movies, but I don't think that he's the heartthrob that he once was. You know, this seems so horrible to say out loud, but his weight fluctuates. When his weight fluctuates, he's not really necessarily that sex symbol. When you see him on the beach with his shirt off, you're like, oh, you miss him when he was in Growing Pains and he was that cute little kid. But yeah, I think he's still a bankable star, but I don't know if he's necessarily a sex symbol anymore.
He needs to see Christopher Biggins's tailor. Maybe try period dress. It's very slimming. Let's talk about somebody wildly talented, Serena Williams, an icon of sport. I mean, where do you start? First of all, what's happened? Why is she in the news?
Well, I mean, she's in the news because she's retiring. Well, unless you're Meghan Markle and then she's in the news because you want to talk about yourself. But she's in the news because she might very well have played her last game on Friday. Keep in mind, this was one of the highest paid female athletes in the world. She was the #1 player in the world by Women's Tennis Association for 319 weeks. Like you said, in America, we call that the GOAT, the greatest of all time. We love Serena. But she was in the news for losing that 3rd round at the U.S. Open. She sobbed during her interview. It was really beautiful to see because she says they're happy tears, thanked her mother, her father, and her sister, and thanked everybody that's ever supported her. Now, she did say never when asked if she is completely retiring from the game. And if you talk to sports commentators, they talk about that competitive spirit she has. And while she has said she'd like to go away and grow her family, she is such an athlete. She is so competitive. So people aren't necessarily sure that it's the last we're going to see from Serena Williams.
Well, that's right. And I think there are parallels between Serena Williams and Cristiano Ronaldo. And it's because both of those people are not just incredibly skilled and talented and gifted, but they are remarkable specimens as well in their own right. When they talk about Ronaldo, they talk about what an athlete he is, and that six-pack. And Serena Williams, a very beautiful woman, but also incredibly strong and just quite something to behold on a tennis court.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was thinking about what her legacy will be. I think hundreds of years from now, people will still study her and talk about her because she is such a unique character, and she stood up for herself in a way that young women can admire. When she would get into the people's faces and say, "Well, how come he can behave that way, but I can't behave that way?" So I think that, and she's also very fashionable. She's just, I think, a pop culture icon at the end of the day.
And she's married to a rather successful and wealthy tech guru, so they're a bit of a power couple, aren't they?
I would say so. I believe he created Reddit, which is my go-to if I ever want, gossip on somebody, or if I ever want to just make sure that the internet agrees with me that a show is trash, I go straight to Reddit. But yeah, they are definitely a power couple. Not to bring up Meghan Markle again, but I do think that that's why you see Meghan and Harry kind of really latch themselves to Serena and her husband, because they want to be similar to them. They want to be elevated to that status, and they want to be considered, in the same spaces.
Well, that's right. Her husband is, of course, the Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, and they appear to be very happy together. And she's happy because she's got all the trophies you could dream of. And also, she's a wealthy woman. Media reports suggest she's worth at least $300 million. Oh.
That's right. I mean, she is, if not the highest paid female athlete, I know she is one of the highest paid female athletes. And I think now, if she does truly retire, you'll see her as the face of luxury brands, because she has that ability. She has that Q score, as they call it in Hollywood, that likability score. You'll see her as the face of luxury brands. You might see her on the talk circuit, getting paid $100,000 to talk at corporate events. There's a lot of opportunity for her. And we know that she helped produce the movie that Will Smith starred in, where he won an Oscar, but nobody talks about that anymore. So I do think that we'll see a lot of more opportunities for her.
Well, that's right. She's just going to become a sort of popular culture fixture, isn't she?
Oh, yes. It's exciting. I'm sure it's an exciting time for her. She did say, because she was crying and it was hard to watch the tears. I mean, it was sobs. And she said, no, these are happy tears. And I think she is trying to figure out, she's trying to navigate that transition.
GOAT, greatest of all time. Not Serena Williams, Kinsey Schofield.
Thanks.
On her way to her first $300 million. Thank you, Kinsey. We'll see you in a week's time. The queen of US showbiz, political and raw reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Check out her website, To Die For Daily. It's time now for this. 31 minutes past 10, I should say. It's just that time in the show when we always look at tomorrow's papers. Hot off the press, and the team have brought them in, and they are literally hot off the photocopier. So let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph. OK, let's have a look. Have you got any papers for me, Adam? Let's start with the Sunday Express, because I want everyone to see this headline. It's quite something to behold. Boris, stop fighting and back new PM. Johnson writes for the Sunday Express as Liz Truss vows to guide the nation through the storm. Boris Johnson has told warring Tories to end their bitter infighting and unite behind their new leader. The outgoing PM says they must back his successor wholeheartedly to stand a chance of winning the next election. In his farewell message published today by the Sunday Express, he assures his troops that Liz Truss, hot favourite to win the leadership race, is more than capable of delivering for the people of Britain. And he insists the brutal mudslinging marring the leadership race must stop for the good of the party and the country. He said this is the moment for every Conservative to come together and back the new leader wholeheartedly. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss expected to emerge as the new PM tomorrow and vows to hit the ground running. Look, if you give me the camera for a second, Adam, let me tell all of you watching that we're doing a special show tomorrow. Greg's been working overtime on this. We're going to do a new Prime Minister special for the whole of tomorrow's show. 2 hours on Liz Truss. We've got an all-star lineup to look at what's in her inbox, what challenges she faces and how she's going to do. Can she win the next election? It's a 2-hour new Prime Minister special tomorrow at 9. You won't want to miss it. OK, where should we go next, Adam? Let's go to the Indy now. They are leading with Russians pay respects to Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev, buried, of course, following his very sad death. Vladimir Putin failed to attend the funeral in Moscow, perhaps in a political statement. Also, let's stick with The Independent for their other story, and it's the horrific treatment of the Rwanda flight refugees. The full horrors of the treatment endured by asylum seekers forced onto a failed deportation flight to Rwanda has been laid bare in new testimonies from security staff. Papers released by the Home Office showed that detainees self-harmed, threatened suicide and were put into pain-inducing restraint after begging not to be deported. Sounds like a tragic story. That said, it's not the best idea to enter the sovereign country illegally. Next up, let's have the Sunday Telegraph. No more sticking plasters on energy, vows Truss. Liz Truss today declared that she'll do away with sticking plasters and kicking the can down the road in order to fix Britain's energy market and reinvigorate the economy. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, Liz Truss, who's considered highly likely to be announced as the next PM on Monday, has unveiled an immediate financial support plan for households and businesses, whilst also trying to solve the deep-rooted problems exposed by the huge impact of COVID and the war in Ukraine. She pledges to set out immediate action on energy bills and energy supply in her first week in office as a prelude to a budget later this month. Well, that's a bit of an exclusive there. The Sunday Telegraph suggesting that there will be a budget within the month. So we'll get more on that shortly from my panel. Where should we go next, Adam? Let's have a look at The Observer. Pack cabinet with Johnson loyalists at your peril, Truss told. Senior Tories today were warning Liz Truss that she'll lead a deeply divided Tory party to inevitable defeat at the next election unless she makes a concerted effort to include senior figures from across the party, including critics of Boris Johnson in the cabinet. I'm sure she'll do that, but let's see how that one plays out. Also, Leave.eu in liquidation, a loan and a fine left unpaid. Brexit campaign group Leave EU have gone into liquidation with its controversial co-founder Aaron Banks appearing to write off a loan worth more than £7 million. Yeah, well, they've lost a bit of money, but they did get the job done, didn't they? Where should we go next? OK, the Sunday Times next. Police fear hard winter of surging crime and civil unrest. Police forces are braced for a rise in crime, a breakdown in public order and even corruption in their ranks this winter as they draw up emergency proposals to deal with the cost of living crisis. Also, energy crisis is priced to avoid world war, says Zelensky. President Zelensky of Ukraine says the financial hardship enveloping in the UK and other Western countries is a price worth paying to avert a new world war. The Sunday Mirror now. Idris at 50, Idris Elba celebrating his birthday and many happy returns to a very talented actor. Also, Tory MPs plot to bring back Boris. Disgraced Boris Johnson, according to the Sunday Mirror, could return to number 10 in an astonishing plot hatched by warring Tory MPs. 12 plan to submit no confidence letters in Liz Truss, set to become the new PM on Monday, and want a leadership vote by Christmas. One Tory said Liz is not very bright. Another added, our only chance is with Boris. Blimey. OK, and I think last but not least, we've got the Star on Sunday. Have we got that? Live and let fry up for your pies only. MI5 looking for chubby secret agents. That's good news for Leonardo DiCaprio. Second career. Don't scoff. The Secret Services are offering new recruits a license to grill. MI5 are looking for new spies, and bosses say that tubby agents will be harder to spot than a muscle-bound Bond.
I'm ringing Barbara Broccoli as soon as this show finishes.
Listen, let me tell you, Christopher Biggins, the best Bond we never had.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any parts, before we get to the papers, that you got that close to getting but didn't, that broke your heart?
Yes, I tell you exactly what the part that I really regretted not getting was Prinny, Prince Regent. And I tell you why, because A, I'm perfect for it, and B, I have the most wonderful calves. And the actor, who I won't tell you who it was, who got the role, had to be padded. He had padded calves. What a waste of money, the BBC.
You were born for the role.
Born for the role.
Absolute travesty. Well, look, let's talk about Liz Truss, Christopher Biggins, and whether she's born for the role. The Sunday Mirror speculating that Rebel Tory MPs will try to reinstall Boris by Christmas. This isn't happening, is it?
Come back, Boris, all is forgiven. That's what I say.
Is that really your thought?
Yes, it is.
Why do you say that?
Because I have no confidence in the two people that we are all supposedly voting for. We don't have a vote yet. But the Tories have been voting, if you're a member of the Conservative Party, and the announcement's going to be made tomorrow, as you say.
Yeah.
But I don't think... there's nobody who excites me in the two of them.
So was chucking Boris out, was that an example of be careful what you wish for?
Well, I think, you know, unfortunately, he made lots of mistakes, which I'm sure you'll all agree on this panel. One of them was lying. And I think if he'd been truthful to us all, we would have accepted that.
Was there a point at which you believed in Boris?
Yes, there was. To begin with, I really did. Because I liked his eccentricities. I liked his hair, and I liked everything that was mad about him. You know, you see his hair. You know, you'd be marvellous Prime Minister, and I think about it.
Do you think?
Well, I mean, you know, I just think that we as an eccentric country, aren't having eccentric people run it.
What went wrong for Boris?
Lying.
You think that was it?
Yeah.
So it's an issue of character in the end rather than competence?
Yes, I think so.
Is that enough of a reason to go? Because all politicians lie, don't they?
No, I don't think it was enough of a reason. And I mean, Partygate was an extraordinary thing which went on and on and on, because it was the only thing the Labour Party could think of criticising.
Come off it, Christopher. I mean, look. This whole boosterish claptrap that Boris comes out with, right, about get Brexit done and all the rest of it, we're dealing with the Northern Ireland Protocol, the massive issues there, which are yet to be resolved. Yes, OK, he got Brexit, the impasse, he dealt with the Brexit impasse, with the Parliament was not functioning, 80-seat majority, fair credit there. But look, he also did do the vaccine rollout. Again, credit to him there. He supported Zelensky. I mean, we're dealing with the issues of that. I'm not wholly convinced that he thought them all through. But anyway, you could argue that he led the country there. But if you're a minister and you go out day after day to bat for the government, right, and you believe in collective responsibility, and you go and you're spouting a line given to you by Number 10, only to find out 24 hours later that the line you've been given is complete and utter nonsense, no minister likes to look stupid. And it reminds me of what Geoffrey House said when he resigned in Parliament over from Margaret Thatcher's government, saying it was a bit like being sent out by the team captain to the crease only to find that your bats have been broken by the team captain before the first balls were bowled. I mean, Boris is going to resign. Look at Blair. Blair resigned eventually because Brown was hounding him, but his epitaph will be Iraq. Cameron, it was Brexit. May, it was Brexit too. Boris, it's Owen Paterson trying to change the rules over a guy who was abusing his position for lobbying. It was parties in Downing Street, and supposedly saying that he didn't know someone had a record of harassing people, Chris Pincher, when he did, and he was appointed him. It's all a case of personality over policy.
It's pretty trivial stuff, though.
Yeah, but
compared to the Iraq War.
But it only matters because if your own ministers don't have confidence in you, because you've got to have a system where if people go out to bat for you, they've got to rely on what they're hearing is actually factually true. No one wants to look stupid.
Do you think Conservatives actually believe in collective responsibility? I mean, that's sort of a...
I don't think any party do.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
Look how divided Labour are.
Yeah,
The Labour movement can't stand Keir Starmer.
No, and that's what I'm thinking, I'm thinking about these not as individuals, but as political parties and professional career politicians. So therefore, I'm not sure any of them actually really go out to bat for each other. I think they go out and bat for themselves.
Yeah, but Lisa, if you're in government, I mean, there is a thing where you've got to you stick to the party line, but you don't expect the party line that's being fed to you to be a complete fabrication. I mean, the only other thing I'd say is, I mean, and to Christopher's point here, in terms of the quality of the people we have on offer, it's absolutely not very good. I mean, I think Rishi's actually decent and credible, although he lacks political experience. He's had a meteoric rise and showed a bit of political naivety on his green card, tax status, etc., and all these issues. But this is partly also Boris's doing because he surrounded himself with pygmies. I mean, if you're confident in yourself, you surround yourself with tall poppies because they know that they're going to deliver for you and make you look good. But that's not what he did. Yeah. We've got a hollowed-out political system on the back of a complete lack of confidence and trust in politicians on the back of the Iraq War, expenses scandal. Also, social media now, the public's very unforgiving and, frankly, quite downright rude a lot of the time. So, who would want to be a politician, right? We get the politicians we deserve, and the politicians haven't done themselves any favours by inculcating a lack of trust in them on the back of Iraq and expenses.
But not only, I mean, are we getting the politicians we deserve, or are we getting the politicians that our system and our structure sort of can throw out?
But it used to be a lot better, Lisa, than before. I mean, you think about Howe, Heseltine, Hurd,
Yeah, you see,
Thatcher,
I wouldn't. Yeah,
Blair,
I definitely.
Brown. Well, I know you're an anarchist,
I
but
know,
still,
but
you know,
I definitely wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't put those as good politicians.
Well, they had stature.
Yeah.
Did anyone on this panel meet John Smith?
Yeah,
John Smith was a fantastic politician.
He was.
He was a wonderful man, and it was the saddest thing ever when he died, because I, as a Conservative, would have voted for him.
But he was serious, Christopher.
He was serious.
He was a serious guy.
But also he had something about him too, a charisma.
Earnest.
Yes.
Right, hard-working. You could not imagine a John Smith government or even a Gordon Brown government having parties in Downing Street, could you? Or even a Theresa May government.
No,
really,
no.
could you?
No. Could
exactly.
But thinking about the times that we're in, so if we think about the times that we're in, and we are in very interesting times, what would be the character of the politician today? And I think that's a really big question that none of us... Because,
an important question.
Yeah, because everything's happening like this constantly. It's this and this and this. And are any of us sitting back and thinking, hang on, what do we need?
Yeah, but it's a very, very good question. And the challenges for the Prime Minister when this is announced on Monday are gargantuan. It's huge. I mean, just imagine, you've got inflation heading to like 20% plus, according to some analysts. You've got the energy crisis. You've got public strikes all over the place, from barristers, for heaven's sake, to the NHS, to the RMT, to ASLEF. And also, the reason, and Lisa, to your point, strike action's not even being condemned by people because people understand how difficult it is, right?
People are actually supporting strikes. Exactly. I mean, I was looking at the Sunday Telegraph, and there's a little paragraph here, and all of a sudden I kind of thought, oh no, today mistrust is to reveal that she's going to set up a council of economic advisors comprising of a team of world-class economists. Yeah. Now, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because world-class economists, do they really understand about the family that's got to eke out 20 quid for all their shopping all week? Is a world-class economist going to know this?
No.
So I'm thinking, is this just more of the same? Is this just more of a sort of elite
discussion? We've had 2.5 years of listening to experts, and look where it's got us.
Yeah, and
we had the disastrous modelling in relation to the pandemic. Well, we've had terrible economic modelling in relation to inflation.
But the other thing, Lisa,
from
is
the Bank of England.
The thing that Lisa and Chris, but the thing that worries me is that, again, and this is what it's saying over here, is Pat Cabinet, the Observer, Pat Cabinet with Johnson loyalists at your peril, trust told. I mean, the party's divided right now. If the party is going to heal with basically 2 years to go before an election, she really should be looking to appoint people across the divide, based purely on competence and ability to deliver. I know that every leader wants to surround themselves with a coterie of people they trust, but frankly, the challenges we face are so big that she should rise above that, but I don't think she will.
Let's face it, who would want to be Prime Minister now?
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't think of the worst job.
Well, exactly right. And this ties in with Boris's piece for the Sunday Express, writing exclusively for the Express in tomorrow's paper, Christopher. Stop fighting and back the new PM. That's a good message for the Tory party. It's a good message for the country, isn't it? Because come what may, she will be our next PM for 2 years. We've got to get behind her.
Of course. I mean, because that's our only hope at the moment. And we are about to embark on the most terrible 2 years, or if not longer.
Yeah.
That is the awful reality of the situation.
Well, it is, and it's deeply, deeply chilling. Also, we've got the Tory infighting story in the Sunday Mirror. But on that Telegraph piece, and this is Truss herself writing for the Sunday Telegraph, quite a scoop that they've got her to pen this article, and it's about the issues on energy. It ties in with my big opinion monologue earlier, which we debated. Liz Truss declares in the paper tomorrow that she'll do away with sticking plasters and kicking the can down the road in order to fix Britain's energy market and reinvigorate the economy. Now, Christopher, what she's going to need, and you said that Boris went because of character, it's going to be character that will get her through. She's going to have to be tough. And she's going to have to soak up a lot of abuse and a lot of negative headlines if she's going to fix this country's problems.
And she's got to look for a character. For a character. Because I don't think she has that at the moment.
Are we not underestimating her before she's had a chance to actually do the job?
Well, no,
she has impressed many as Foreign Secretary, standing up to Vladimir Putin. And, of course, as Trade Secretary, she brokered all of those post-Brexit trade.
But what does she actually believe in?
But and what,
yes, exactly.
and what does that mean? Stick it. We're going to on the sticking plaster and the kicking the can down there. It sounds like political rhetoric.
I think what it means is that she's going to grant fracking licences. She's going to green light oil exploration. I think she's going to push back on the green eco agenda. And I think she's going to splash the cash supporting Brits through the winter.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But what we talked about earlier. But the problem we've got, Ali, is it will cost us.
It will cost us, and also, look, I agree on supply. We need to look at it. I don't know enough about fracking, to be honest. I remain to be convinced about fracking, but I am worried about potential impacts on water supply in the countryside. But look, I remain to be convinced. Keep an open mind.
Well, the main objection to fracking was those tremors, which were tiny.
Well, look. The bottom line is we
Look
do
at
need
America.
to...
America have achieved energy independence thanks to
True.
fracking. Under your mate, Barack Obama.
But I
Liberal lefty.
I visited, I don't think he was a liberal lefty, actually, but I visited West Virginia and where they do mountaintop removal, and the water system there was awful. I think before we start really sort of granting that we're going to do, I do think we need to know what we're doing. I mean, going back to Margaret Thatcher, and I say this all the time on this show, let's never forget that Margaret Thatcher ended in an industry that could now help us.
What was?
The coal mining.
Eco-warriors, let us dig it.
But look, at least they've bitten the bullet on Sizewell C nuclear facility. It's going to take 10 years to build, but at least they've signed it off.
Lots more from the papers next, and another news-based game show. See you shortly.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ronald says, great show tonight. Really looking forward to your show tomorrow. Thank you. Take care, Ron. Yes, we're doing a new Prime Minister special from 9 till 11. 2 hours in terms of what is facing Liz Truss and what will be the most challenging 2 years in the recent history of this country. Also, lots and lots of responses to our debates around political leadership. What happened to the great leaders, the Ronald Reagans, the Thatchers, the John Smiths, quite rightly mentioned. You might have loved him or hated him, but old Barack Obama and indeed Tony Blair, they had a certain calibre, didn't they? Is Liz Truss made of the same stuff? You tell me. However, strong words from Annie, who says, Dear Mark, tell that ignorant woman on your panel, Arthur Scargill and Harold Wilson closed more minds than Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, they always say this. They always say this, and it's the. You know what? I don't have time to explain it, but when a coal mine, when the seam runs out, it closes. And in the 1960s, lots and lots of coal mines closed because the seams ran out. The difference is Margaret Thatcher ended an industry.
OK, well, look, let me tell you that Lisa is certainly not ignorant, but it is all about opinions. And Annie, thank you for sharing yours. Keep those opinions coming. No one gets cancelled on my watch. Reacting to big stories of the day, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, author and academic Lisa Mackenzie, and political commentator Ali Miraj. A quick word on this one from the papers before we get to the game. The cost of living crunch is now slowly starting to creep into every aspect of our lives, including lunch. You may not have noticed, but your favourite lunchtime choices from Greggs, Pret and Wetherspoons have all gone up in price in order to keep companies afloat. That's after the iconic 99p cheeseburger from McDonald's has had its price raised for the first time in 14 years. Sacrilege. So should we skip lunch to save money? What do you think, Lisa?
No, well, I mean, you know, I'm sick of these handy tips. I'm sick of them. You know, wear a jumper, you know, buy a new kettle. That's the new one, buy a new kettle. Yeah. Apparently, you know...
Who said buy a new kettle? Boris.
Boris.
No, that was taken out of context.
Yeah, and then there was another MP which just said buy an air fryer. That's going to save energy. I am sick of these handy tips. Skipping lunch, buying a new kettle or putting a jumper on is not going to help us with £4,000 energy bills. Let's be honest about this.
Biggins, you enjoy lunch?
I do.
Liquid or solid?
Both.
I mean, you'd struggle without your occasional trips to the Ivy.
I went there today, fair enough, in Cobham.
That's why you're on such good form.
Absolutely, well, thank you. But, I mean, the thing is that I think you're right, actually. It's ridiculous to make these, you know, cook after 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
What does that mean? You know, is it because it's cheaper?
Yeah, it's patronising as well, isn't it?
I think it is patronising.
I'd love to discuss it more, but it's time now for the Great British Game Show. And rapper Kanye West posted a confusing statement on social media surrounding his divorce from Kim Kardashian. He's not a man known for his clarity or eloquent oration. I've got to say, talented artist, but slightly bonkers if you ask me. Some of his past statements have been a mystery worthy of Agatha Christie. Let's not forget Kanye West is a man who once said, "I actually don't like thinking. I think people think I like to think a lot, and I don't. I don't like to think at all." I should be Prime Minister. Well, this has inspired tonight's Great British Game Show. Who said that? Bonkers celebrity quotes. And let's start with this one. Who said, and let's flash this one up if we can, two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe. Very clever man, a scientist with frizzy, crazy hair.
Oh, Einstein.
Physicist. Einstein. Albert Einstein said that.
Yes.
How about this man who said, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth? Famous boxer.
Chris Eubank.
No. His nickname was Iron Mike Tyson. Well done. Points go to Ali. OK, how about it costs a lot of money to look this cheap? Who said that?
Oh, was it Joan Rivers?
It's not, but it's a similar blonde bombshell with quite a big décolletage. Country.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton.
Oh, my favourite.
I love her tits.
The important thing is not what they think of me, but what I think of them. A great queen. Not Elizabeth, but...
A great queen?
Yeah.
I should know this.
The important thing is not what they think of me, but what I think of them. It was Queen Victoria. My policy on cake is pro having it and pro eating it.
Boris.
Bojo himself. Sure we'll miss that fella. Dibs, join us for our new Prime Minister special tomorrow. Thanks for your company. See you at 9.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet for some northern and western areas, with the best of the brightness in the southeast. Let's take a look at the details. It will be a wet start to the day across parts of Scotland, but especially so for northern and eastern areas where a yellow rain warning is in force. A weather warning is also in effect in Northern Ireland, with some heavy and persistent rain, accompanied by some strong winds during the morning. Northern England, though, should be drier, although some patchy rain is possible in places. It will be rather cloudy and breezy along the Irish Sea coast. The wettest weather coming across Wales and northwest England during the morning will be across western Wales. However, throughout the morning, the rain will tend to move northeastwards across the area. The best of any morning brightness will be towards the southeast. It will be a mild start to the day with temperatures around the mid-teens. The best of the morning sunshine, though, will be across East Anglia. However, there could be the odd mist or fog patch around, but these should quickly clear.